Don't think that angel numbers are random. The universe uses them to signal your journey. The moment you stopped believing in coincidence, you have seen it before. The clock reads 11:11, and something inside you pauses, not your mind, but something deeper. A breath that isn't quite a breath. A recognition that has no name. For a split second, you feel as though the world just winked at you, as though some invisible intelligence just pressed a finger gently against the glass of your reality and said, "I am here." And then the moment passes. The rational mind steps back in, smooths everything over, and files the experience under the comfortable label of coincidence. You move on. But you remember it. You always remember it. That pause, that flicker of something you cannot explain, is what brought you here today. Not curiosity, not boredom, something older than both. Because the soul does not stumble into conversations like this one. It arrives. It arrives at exactly the moment it is ready to stop pretending that what it has been feeling is nothing. There is a difference between arriving somewhere and being led there, and if you are honest with yourself, you already know which one this is. There is a question that lives underneath every repeating number you have ever seen, every pattern you have noticed and then talked yourself out of, every moment where the timing felt too perfect to be accidental. The question is not, what does this number mean? The question is, what would my life look like if I stopped dismissing the signs and started listening to them? What version of yourself have you been postponing because trusting the signs would require trusting something you cannot fully control? This video exists for the person who is tired of the gap between what they sense and what they allow themselves to believe. It exists for the one who has been living in that gap for years, feeling something, denying something, grieving the distance between their intuition and their permission to trust it. It exists for the soul that has seen the signs, felt the pull, and then, out of fear or conditioning or the relentless pressure of a world that does not reward wonder, chose the safe explanation over the true one. It exists for you. What you are about to receive is not a theory. It is not a spiritual trend or a numerological hobby. It is an invitation to remember a language your soul has always known, a language the universe has never stopped using to reach you, even in the seasons when you were too overwhelmed, too afraid, or too exhausted to hear it. That language is written in numbers, and it has been written for you, specifically, for longer than you realize. The signs were not waiting for you to become more spiritual, more enlightened, or more deserving. They were waiting for you to become more honest enough to stop explaining away the inexplicable, honest enough to sit with the question instead of rushing to close it, honest enough to consider that what has been following you, through clocks and receipts and license plates and the pages of books you open to exactly the right passage, might not be coincidence at all, might never have been. By the time this conversation ends, you will not see a repeating number the same way again. Not because you will have memorized a list of meanings, but because something in you will have shifted, quietly, irreversibly, in the direction of trust. The language the universe never stopped speaking. Long before the modern world reduced numbers to tools of measurement and commerce, ancient civilizations understood something that contemporary culture has nearly forgotten. Numbers are not abstractions. They are living frequencies. They are the structural language through which the intelligence of creation organizes itself, communicates with itself, and reaches into the experience of every conscious soul walking this earth. Pythagoras, the Greek philosopher and mystic whose influence on mathematics shaped the entire Western intellectual tradition, taught that numbers are the foundation of all things, not merely symbols representing quantity, but vibrational realities that carry energetic meaning. For Pythagoras and his school, to understand a number was to understand a law of the universe. It was not metaphor, it was cosmology. His students were forbidden from sharing the deeper numerical teachings with the uninitiated, not because the knowledge was dangerous, but because it required a level of inner preparation that most people had not yet undertaken. The language of numbers in that tradition was treated with the reverence due to something sacred. The ancient Egyptians encoded numerical relationships into the proportions of sacred architecture, understanding that certain ratios and sequences resonated with the fundamental harmonics of existence itself. The Kabbalistic tradition within ancient Jewish mysticism built an entire system of spiritual interpretation around the numerical values of letters and words, revealing layers of divine meaning invisible to the surface eye. The Vedic tradition of ancient India developed numerological systems that mapped the soul's journey across multiple lifetimes, using numbers as navigational markers across the vast terrain of spiritual evolution. In each of these traditions, separated by geography and century and cultural context, the same fundamental understanding persisted. Numbers are not neutral. They are alive with meaning. They are the grammar of the universe's inner speech. What these traditions understood, and what the modern mind has been conditioned to dismiss, is that the universe is not a mechanical system operating by blind, impersonal forces. It is a living, communicating intelligence. And like any intelligence, it communicates in the language most accessible to those it is trying to reach. For the human soul embedded in physical experience, that language takes the form of pattern, synchronicity, and repetition. It takes the form of numbers appearing in the precise moments when a message is most needed. Angel numbers are not a spiritual fad invented in the age of social media. They are the contemporary expression of an ancient and unbroken conversation between the divine intelligence of the universe and the awakening consciousness of the human soul. When you see 333 on a license plate at the exact moment you were questioning whether to take a step forward in your life, that is not the algorithm of random chance producing a pleasing pattern. That is the language of creation, fluent and unhurried, delivering a message calibrated to the exact frequency of your soul's current need. The reason this language feels unfamiliar is not because it is new. It is because you were taught, systematically, to stop hearing it. The education you received, the culture you were raised in, the intellectual frameworks you were given to make sense of reality, all of these were built on a foundation that excluded the possibility of a universe that speaks. But the exclusion was never a discovery. It was a choice, and choices can be unmade. Languages once remembered are never truly forgotten. The universe never stopped speaking. The only question that has ever existed is whether you were willing to listen. Why your rational mind rejects the signs. There is a particular kind of loneliness in having a spiritual experience and immediately doubting it. In seeing something that moves you, truly moves you, at a level beneath words, and then watching your own mind dismantle it, explain it away, reduce it to statistics and cognitive bias and the brain's tendency to find patterns in noise. It is a loneliness that many people carry without ever naming it. The loneliness of being divided against your own knowing. This division was not born in you, it was installed. Over years of education, cultural messaging, and social reinforcement, the modern mind was trained to equate intelligence with skepticism, and skepticism with the dismissal of anything that cannot be measured, replicated in a laboratory, or explained through the framework of material causation. To trust a sign, to allow a repeating number to carry meaning for you, was framed as weakness, as wishful thinking, as the psychological vulnerability of someone who cannot tolerate the randomness of a universe that does not care about them personally. The message delivered consistently enough and from enough authoritative sources eventually lands. You learn to perform doubt even when you do not feel it. You learn to translate your genuine inner experiences into the language of coincidence and selective attention, because that translation is socially safe in a way that the truth is not. But here is what that framework never accounted for: the experience itself. Not the interpretation of the experience, not the meaning assigned to it after the fact, but the raw, immediate, precognitive recognition that something just happened. Something that matters. That recognition is not manufactured by wishful thinking. It is not a projection of a desperate mind onto neutral data. It is the soul's intelligence firing before the rational mind has had a chance to intervene. And it fires consistently, reliably, and with a kind of precision that pure coincidence cannot account for. Carl Jung, one of the most rigorous and scientifically disciplined minds of the 20th century, spent decades investigating exactly this territory. He did not dismiss the experience of meaningful coincidence as delusion. He took it seriously enough to develop an entire theoretical framework around it. the concept of synchronicity, precisely because the evidence of his clinical practice and his own life showed him that the rational mind's rejection of these experiences was not intelligence. It was fear. Fear of a universe that is more alive, more relational, and more personally invested in the individual soul than the materialist worldview could accommodate. The resistance you feel when you almost let yourself believe in a sign is worth examining honestly. Because resistance of that particular quality, the kind that arrives with force, with urgency, with a need to shut something down quickly, is rarely the voice of discernment. It is the voice of a structure that knows it is about to be challenged. And the structure that is challenged when a soul begins to trust the signs is the belief that you are alone in this universe, navigating a random and indifferent world, without guidance, without support, without an intelligence that knows your name. That belief is not the truth. It is the wound. And the sign you just dismissed was the medicine. The rational mind rejected it not because it was false, but because receiving it would require the kind of openness that the wounded self has spent years learning to avoid. Recognizing that distinction between genuine discernment and defended fear is not a small thing. It is in many ways the beginning of everything. The architecture of numbers, how the universe builds a message. To understand angel numbers at the level the universe intends them to be understood, it is necessary to begin where all numerical meaning begins, with the single digit. Each number from 1 through 9 carries a distinct vibrational signature, an energetic identity that is not assigned by human convention, but emerges from the fundamental nature of how that frequency interacts with consciousness, with creation, and with the soul's journey through physical existence. The number 1 carries the frequency of initiation, of singular focus, of the point from which all movement begins. It is the energy of the self becoming aware of itself, the first breath, the first step, the moment consciousness chooses to move in a direction. When the universe places the frequency of 1 in your path, it is speaking about beginnings, about the self, about the creative power of your own directed attention. The number 2 carries the frequency of relationship, of polarity, of the sacred tension between opposites that generates all movement and growth. It is the energy of the soul in dialogue, with another, with the universe, with its own shadow. 3 carries the energy of creative expression, of the trinity of thought, word, and action aligning in generative force. 4 speaks of foundation, of the patient architecture of lasting change. 5 carries the trembling frequency of transformation, the energy of everything that is about to become something else. 6 holds the vibration of harmony, of the heart's intelligence, of love as a structural force in the universe. 7 is the number of the mystical, of inner knowing, of the soul that has gone deep enough into itself to touch something timeless. 8 carries the frequency of cosmic law, of cycles completing and new ones beginning, of the infinite loop between cause and effect. 9 holds the vibration of completion, of wisdom earned through experience, of the soul that has traveled far enough to offer something back. When the universe combines these frequencies, repeating them, layering them, presenting them in specific sequences at specific moments, it is not generating noise. It is composing a message with the precision of a master architect who knows exactly which frequencies your soul is ready to receive, and exactly what combination will cut through the static of daily life and land in the place that is still listening. To see 444 is to receive simultaneously the amplified frequency of foundation, a message that you are being held, that what you are building has divine support, that the ground beneath you is more solid than your fear has been telling you. To see 1212 is to receive a message about new beginnings arriving through the bridge of relationship and sacred balance. To see 333 is to be addressed directly in the register of creative alignment, the universe confirming that your thoughts, your words, and your actions are converging toward something real. To see 555 is to receive a message of imminent transformation, the universe signaling that the ground is shifting beneath you, not to destabilize you, but to carry you somewhere your current position cannot reach. Every sequence is a sentence. Every repetition is emphasis. The universe does not speak in approximations. It does not send you a signal and then hope you find the general vicinity of its meaning. It sends you, with extraordinary precision, exactly the frequency that corresponds to exactly what your soul needs to understand at exactly this moment. And when you begin to receive these messages not as curiosities but as correspondence from an intelligence that knows you completely, you will never look at a number the same way again. 1111 and the threshold of awakening. There is a reason 1111 is the most widely recognized, most frequently reported, and most emotionally resonant of all angel number sequences. It is not because it is the most common. Statistically, it appears no more often than any other combination of digits. It is because of what it does to the person who sees it. Something happens in the body, in the chest, in the space behind the eyes, that is difficult to rationalize and impossible to fully ignore. A brief suspension of the ordinary, a sense of being seen by something enormous and intimate at the same time. A feeling that lasts only a moment, but leaves a mark that the rational mind spends considerable energy trying to explain away. The number 11 in the language of sacred numerology is a master number, one of a small set of double-digit numbers that carry a frequency so concentrated, so specifically charged, that it is not reduced to a single digit the way other numbers are. 11 is the number of the awakened channel. It is the frequency of a soul that has developed enough sensitivity, enough spiritual readiness, to serve as a bridge between the visible and the invisible dimensions of existence. It is the number that appears when the membrane between the material world and the world of spirit becomes thin. When you see 1111, you are not simply observing a numerical pattern. You are standing at an intersection that the ordinary eye cannot see, a crossing point between what is and what is becoming. When 1111 appears, particularly when it appears repeatedly, over days or weeks or at moments of sharp emotional significance, it is not a decoration, it is a doorway. The universe is not simply saying, "Pay attention." It is saying, "You are at a threshold. Something is crossing over. Something in you is being activated that has been dormant, compressed, waiting for the precise conditions of this moment in your journey to come fully alive." The activation is not dramatic. It does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives in the quiet electric recognition that something is different now, that something has shifted, that you are not the same person who looked at the clock 30 seconds ago. Many people report their first intense encounter with 1111 during periods of profound personal disruption, the end of a relationship, the loss of a sense of identity, the collapse of a life that no longer fits the soul's actual dimensions. This is not coincidence, and it is not cruelty. It is the intelligence of the universe directing its most powerful signal to the soul at the exact moment the old architecture has broken down enough to allow something new to move in. The threshold only becomes visible when you have been forced to stop and stand still long enough to see it. The disruption is not the obstacle to the awakening. The disruption is the awakening's method of arrival. To see 1111 is to be invited into full conscious presence. It is an interruption of the sleepwalking state, the numbed, automatic, surface-level engagement with life that most people mistake for living. It is the universe reaching through the clock, through the license plate, through the receipt on the cafe counter, and placing its hand on your shoulder with the quiet certainty of something that has been waiting patiently for you to look up. The question 1111 always asks is the same. Are you ready to wake up now? Not tomorrow. Not when life becomes easier. Now. In this exact configuration of pain and possibility, in this precise intersection of who you have been and who you are about to become. The threshold has always been here. The number is simply how you finally see it. When the signs come in crisis, the numbers that appear in your darkest hours, there is a particular cruelty that the doubting mind assigns to divine signs when they appear during suffering. If the universe loved me, it would remove the pain, not send me numbers. If I were truly guided, I would not be in this situation. The signs feel in those moments like a cosmic mockery, evidence not of care but of the indifference of an intelligence too vast to understand what a human being actually needs when they are breaking. This interpretation is understandable. It is also precisely backwards. The intensification of signs during crisis is not the universe's failure to respond to your pain. It is the universe's most concentrated and urgent expression of its presence within your pain. When the structures of ordinary life collapse, when the relationship ends, when the health shatters, when the identity you built your entire world around proves insufficient for who you are becoming, the static of normal existence clears. The noise drops, and in that terrible clarifying silence, the soul becomes capable of hearing things it could not hear before. The universe knows this. It has always known this. It does not wait for your crisis to pass before sending its message. It sends its message into the heart of the crisis because the heart of the crisis is the only place where you are finally still enough to receive it. This is why the most spiritually significant encounters with angel numbers are reported not during comfortable, successful periods of life, but during the hardest seasons. Not because the divine is sadistic, but because the hard seasons are the ones when the human heart is finally porous enough to receive a signal that has always been broadcasting. Suffering, as brutal as it is, creates receptivity. It breaks down the defended surfaces through which divine communication rarely penetrates during times of ease and complacency. It removes, often without mercy, the comfortable distance that the well-defended self maintains between itself and the truth. The ancient wisdom traditions understood this without sentimentalizing it. The dark night of the soul, described by mystics across centuries and traditions with stunning consistency, is not a punishment. It is a restructuring. It is the dissolution of what the soul has outgrown so that what it was always meant to become can finally take form. And in the midst of that dissolution, the signs are not absent. They are everywhere. They are the universe's way of communicating the one thing that the suffering mind is most desperate to hear and least capable of believing. You are not alone in this. I have not abandoned you. I have not looked away. I am here, in the darkness with you, and I know exactly where this is going. The number that appears on the morning you feel you cannot take another step is not random timing. It is the universe leaning in close enough to whisper, and what it is whispering is always the same thing. Keep going. What is breaking in you is not you. What is ending in you was never the real thing. And what is beginning, though you cannot see it yet, though it has no shape yet that your mind can recognize and hold on to, is more aligned with your soul's true nature than anything you are currently losing. The loss is real. The pain is real. And the guidance arriving inside the pain is equally real. All three can be true at once. In fact, they must be, because that is precisely how transformation works. Synchronicity is not chance, it is choreography. Carl Jung spent decades of his professional life doing something that required considerable intellectual courage, taking seriously the experiences that his scientific culture insisted were either meaningless or pathological. He listened to his patients describe moments of uncanny coincidence, dreams that seemed to predict events, numbers that appeared with eerie precision, encounters that carried the unmistakable texture of destiny. And instead of reducing these accounts to projection or magical thinking, he asked a different question. What if meaningful coincidence is not an anomaly in the structure of reality, but a fundamental feature of it? The answer he arrived at, after decades of research, clinical observation, and deep personal investigation, was the concept of synchronicity. The meaningful coincidence of inner and outer events that are not connected by linear causation, but by something more fundamental, by meaning itself. Jung proposed that consciousness and matter are not separate systems operating independently of each other, but expressions of a deeper unified reality in which the inner world of the soul and the outer world of events are in constant responsive dialogue. He was not speaking poetically. He was describing with the precision of a trained scientist a phenomenon he had observed too consistently and too rigorously to dismiss. What this means when brought into the lived experience of the person who keeps seeing the same number at the same emotional moments is this. The sign is not being sent to you from somewhere outside yourself. It is being generated at the intersection of you and the universe, at the precise point where your inner state meets the outer world's capacity to reflect it back. The choreography is not happening around you. It is happening through you. This is a significant shift in understanding, because it removes the passivity from the experience of receiving signs. It reveals that you are not a recipient of divine communication in the way a radio passively receives a broadcast, You are a participant in the generation of that communication. Your consciousness, your readiness, your emotional frequency, your soul's current position in its own journey. All of these determine what appears in your external world, and when, and in what form. The universe choreographs through you, not merely for you. This understanding also reframes what it means when the signs change. When the number sequence that has been following you for months suddenly shifts to a different one, that transition is not arbitrary. It reflects a corresponding shift in the soul's inner state, a movement from one chapter of understanding to another, from one energetic configuration to the next. The outer choreography is always, without exception, mirroring the inner dance. And the more conscious you become of your own inner movements, the more clearly you will be able to read the steps the universe is taking in response. This is what makes the appearance of a sign at a critical moment so much more than a comfort. It is confirmation that your inner world is coherent enough, alive enough, and awake enough to generate a reflection in the outer world that corresponds precisely to what your soul most needs to receive. The coincidence is not accidental. It is the universe showing you what you are made of and what you are becoming. Nothing about that is random. Every step of it has been danced before, and every step of it is unfolding exactly as it should. The numbers you keep ignoring and what they are trying to tell you. Let us be honest with each other for a moment, because this section is not about the signs you have received and celebrated. It is about the ones you have received and silenced. You know what they are. The sequence you saw 3 times in one day and decided was just your brain playing tricks. The number that appeared on the morning of a decision you were afraid to make, which you noticed and then deliberately did not think about because thinking about it would have required you to take it seriously. The pattern that has been following you for months, on clocks, on receipts, on the pages of books you open randomly, that you have classified as a habit of selective attention, rather than allow yourself to wonder whether it might be something more. And then there are the ones you noticed at night, in the quiet hours when the defenses drop and the soul gets a moment of room to breathe, and you felt something, really felt something, and by morning you had already talked yourself back out of it. There is a specific quality to the act of dismissing a sign you know you saw. It is different from genuinely not noticing. It has a texture of effort to it, a small, quick, practiced movement of the inner hand that says, not this, not now, not real. And then the conversation you have with yourself afterward, which is never fully convincing, because if it were fully convincing, you would not still be thinking about it. You would not still remember the number. You would not still carry in some quiet corner of your awareness the ghost of the question you refuse to ask. What is it costing you to keep dismissing the language the universe is using to reach you? Not in abstract spiritual terms, in practical, lived terms, because every ignored sign is a message that arrived and found no one home. Every rationalized coincidence is a door you had the chance to open and chose instead to walk past. And over time, the accumulated weight of those unchosen doors becomes a kind of spiritual flatness, a life that is functional but not luminous, that moves forward but not toward anything that feels like it matters, that keeps you safe from the discomfort of trust at the cost of the aliveness that trust would generate. The numbers you keep ignoring are not punishing you by appearing. They are persisting because the message has not yet been received, and the intelligence behind them does not give up. It does not grow frustrated. It does not conclude that you are a lost cause and redirect its attention elsewhere. It simply finds another clock, another license plate, another moment in which to place the same patient, precise, loving signal in your path, and wait to see whether this time, perhaps, you will let yourself stop and receive it. You are reading this because some part of you already decided to stop. The part of you that is tired of the effort it takes to stay skeptical. The part of you that knows, has always known, that what has been following you is not random, and that the cost of pretending otherwise is becoming too high. The question now is whether you will let that part of you lead, your soul contract and the numerical milestones along the way. Before you arrived in this body, in this life, in this particular constellation of relationships and circumstances and challenges, something was agreed upon. This is not a metaphor. It is one of the most consistently reported elements across near-death experience accounts, past life regression research, and the wisdom traditions of cultures that predate written history. The soul, before incarnating, participates in a kind of pre-birth negotiation, a setting of intentions, a choosing of conditions, a mapping of the experiences and thresholds that will most efficiently serve its growth in the coming lifetime. This pre-incarnation agreement is what various spiritual traditions have called the soul contract. The soul contract is not a rigid script. It is more like a navigational chart, a set of coordinates that the soul agreed to move through, with significant latitude in how the journey between those coordinates unfolds. The coordinates themselves are fixed. The core relationships, the defining challenges, the moments of crisis and transformation that serve as the soul's most essential curriculum. The path between them is shaped by choice, by timing, by the degree of consciousness the soul is able to bring to each crossing. What this means, in lived experience, is that the difficulty you are moving through right now is not a punishment, and it is not an accident. It is a coordinate. It is a point on the map that your soul, in its deepest wisdom, agreed to pass through, because passing through it was the only way to arrive at what comes next. Angel numbers within this framework function as the navigational markers embedded in the chart. They are the universe's way of communicating the soul's position relative to the journey it agreed to take. When 444 appears at a moment of profound uncertainty, it is not a generic reassurance. It is a coordinate confirmation, the universe indicating that the soul is precisely where its contract intended it to be, that the disorientation is not evidence of being lost, but of being exactly at the threshold that was always meant to be here. When a number sequence appears repeatedly at a specific chapter of a person's life, and then suddenly disappears, replaced by a different sequence, that transition is meaningful. It marks the completion of one phase of the contract and the opening of the next. The soul has moved through a threshold and is now operating under a new set of navigational instructions. The numbers change because the territory has changed, and the change in territory means that something the soul agreed to learn or experience has been integrated, and the next assignment is ready. There are also number sequences that appear at moments of apparent stagnation, when nothing seems to be moving, when effort seems to yield no visible result, when the soul begins to wonder whether it has been forgotten. In these moments, the appearance of a sign is the universe's confirmation that the stillness is not emptiness. It is gestation. The work being done in these quiet, invisible seasons is some of the most essential work of the entire soul contract, and the numbers that appear within it are the universe's way of saying, stay. What is being built here cannot be rushed, and it will be worth every moment of the waiting. You did not arrive in this life without preparation. You did not enter this particular season of your journey without having, at the level of the soul, agreed to its terms. And the numbers appearing in your life right now are not decorations. They are coordinates. They are the universe pointing at the map and saying, here, you are here. And here, exactly here, is exactly where you were always meant to be. The Hermetic principle of correspondence and the numbers that mirror your inner state. Among the oldest and most enduring foundations of esoteric wisdom is a principle so fundamental that it appears, in some form, in virtually every mystical tradition the world has produced. It is stated most concisely in the ancient Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without. This principle, known in the Western esoteric tradition as the Hermetic principle of correspondence, asserts that the macrocosm and the microcosm are not separate systems, but perfect reflections of each other, and that what exists in one domain of reality is always mirrored in corresponding form in every other domain. Applied to the experience of angel numbers, this principle reveals something that fundamentally changes the relationship between the seeker and the signs. You do not receive a particular number sequence because the universe has decided, from the outside, that you need a specific message. You attract that sequence because the frequency you are currently operating at, the energetic signature of your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs, and your soul's current position in its journey, is resonating at a vibration that corresponds precisely to the message contained in that number. In other words, the sign is a mirror. It is the outer world showing you, in the language of numbers, what is already happening inside you. The universe does not communicate to you from across a distance. It communicates through the perfect correspondence between your inner state and the outer pattern that your inner state generates. You are not a passive recipient of divine messages. You are the generating source of the frequency that calls them forth. This understanding carries a profound implication. It means that when you begin to notice a particular number appearing with increasing frequency, the first question to ask is not only, what does this number mean? The more essential question is, what is alive in me right now that is generating this reflection? What am I vibrating at? In my hope, in my fear, in my grief, in my growing readiness, that is calling this precise message into my field of experience. When the answer to that question is found, and it is always found, because the correspondence between the sign and the inner state is never vague, something remarkable happens. The sign ceases to be a mystery and becomes a confirmation. Not a confirmation of a doctrine or a belief system, but a confirmation of your own inner knowing. And that is perhaps the most profound gift the ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence offers the modern soul, the recognition that the divine is not somewhere else, speaking to you from a distance. It is speaking from within you, through you, and reflecting itself back to you through every surface of the world you inhabit. The universe, through the ancient Hermetic principle of correspondence, is simply showing you what you already know, and giving you, in the language of sacred number, the courage to believe it. The sign was never from somewhere else. It was always from the deepest part of yourself, amplified by the intelligence of a universe that knows how to speak in frequencies you cannot ignore. When the universe redirects you, through repetition, there is a particular kind of spiritual experience that is less dramatic than a single striking sign and more quietly insistent. The experience of a number sequence that simply will not leave. It appears for weeks, then months, sometimes longer. It finds you in places you did not expect. In the timestamp of a message received at a critical moment, in the total of a purchase made on a day when you were at a crossroads, in the page number of the paragraph that stopped your breath. It follows you with the patient, unhurried certainty of something that knows it does not need to rush, because it is not going anywhere until its message has been fully received. This kind of persistent repetition is the universe's most loving form of redirection. And it is important to understand what the word redirection means here, because it is not punishment, and it is not warning, and it is not a sign that something has gone catastrophically wrong. It is the cosmic equivalent of a trusted friend who has watched you walk toward something that is no longer aligned with who you are becoming, and who keeps gently, persistently, calling your name in the direction that is. The repetition is not frustration. It is faithfulness. It is the universe demonstrating through sheer consistency that it will not abandon the message simply because you have not yet been ready to receive it. The soul outgrows things. This is not failure. It is the central activity of spiritual evolution. The relationship, the career, the identity, the belief system, the version of yourself that served you through one chapter of your life. All of these have a natural lifespan. When that lifespan ends, the soul knows. It knows long before the mind is willing to acknowledge it, and the universe, faithful to the soul's deeper knowing, begins to direct its communication in the specific register of redirection. The same message, again and again, from multiple directions, through multiple channels, until the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. If you have been seeing the same number for an extended period of time, without resolution, without the sense that the message has been fully received, this is worth sitting with honestly, not with anxiety and not with the urgent need to decode and act immediately, but with the genuine willingness to ask, what in my life am I holding on to that my soul has already finished with? What direction am I still walking in out of habit or fear or the comfort of the familiar that no longer corresponds to where I am genuinely being called? There is also something worth noticing in the emotional response the repeated number produces over time. In the beginning, it may feel surprising, even exciting. Later, it may begin to feel heavy, weighted with the awareness that something is being asked of you that you have not yet given. That heaviness is not a punishment. It is the pressure of a truth that has been waiting too long to be acknowledged. The discomfort of the persistent sign is proportional to the distance between where you are and where your soul is asking you to go. The repetition will not stop when you figure out the intellectual meaning of the number. It will stop when you make the inner movement that the number has been pointing toward. When you release what needs releasing. When you turn in the direction that has been waiting. The universe does not repeat itself for the pleasure of repetition. It repeats itself because it trusts, with infinite patience, that you will eventually hear it. And when you do, when you finally turn, the number will change because the message will have been received and the next phase of the journey will already be beginning. The emotional frequency behind every number you see. There is a dimension of the angel number experience that is rarely discussed with the specificity it deserves, and it is perhaps the most practically useful dimension of all. The relationship between emotional frequency and the numbers that appear within it, because the signs do not arrive in an emotional vacuum. They arrive in the specific texture of what you are feeling when you see them. And that texture is not incidental. It is part of the message. Every emotion carries a vibrational signature. This is not metaphor or poetic language. It is the implication of a growing body of research into the physics of consciousness, emotion, and energy. Research that converges, from very different directions, on the same conclusion that the ancient wisdom traditions arrived at through direct inner investigation, that emotional states are energetic states, and that different emotional frequencies interact differently with the field of reality that surrounds and interpenetrates the human body. Grief, for example, carries a deep, slow, heavy frequency, one that slows the system, turns the attention inward, and creates a particular kind of openness that more defended emotional states do not allow. It is not coincidental that some of the most spiritually significant encounters with angel numbers are reported during grief. The frequency of grief, as painful as it is, creates a porousness in the psyche through which the subtler signals of divine communication can more easily pass. Grief cracks the armor that ordinary life encourages us to maintain, and in the space of that cracking, the universe finds its entry point. Hope carries a lighter, more expansive frequency, one that orients the consciousness toward possibility and activates what might be called the soul's receiving antenna. When you see an angel number in a moment of genuine hope, the message it carries is amplified by your receptivity. The universe does not need to work as hard to reach you. You are already tuned in. The sign arrives not as an interruption but as a confirmation, landing with a smoothness that feels almost like being recognized. Fear, by contrast, carries a frequency that contracts and closes, one that tends to generate the specific number sequences associated with reassurance and grounding, because the universe is calibrating its message to the exact shape of what the soul needs in that state. The number you see when you are afraid is not the same message you would receive in a moment of expansion. The universe reads your frequency and responds in kind, always delivering exactly what is most needed, in the exact form that your current emotional state is most capable of receiving. Pay attention, then, not only to the number you see, but to what you were feeling in the moment before you saw it. Notice whether you were contracting or expanding, whether you were moving toward something or running from it, whether your heart was open or closed. Because that feeling is not background noise. It is the context within which the message was composed. And together, the emotion and the number, they form a complete communication from an intelligence that knows you far more intimately than you have yet given it credit for knowing. Reading the signs without fear, the art of spiritual discernment. There is a particular way of engaging with signs that looks like spirituality from the outside but is, at its core, a sophisticated form of anxiety. It involves checking for numbers compulsively, assigning urgent meaning to every pattern, living in a state of hypervigilance for divine signals, and experiencing distress when the expected sign fails to appear, or appears in a form that seems ominous. This relationship with signs is not spiritual discernment. It is fear wearing spiritual clothing. And it is worth naming clearly, because it is more common than most people in spiritual communities are willing to acknowledge. The difference between fear-based sign reading and genuine spiritual discernment is not in the signs themselves. It is in the relationship the soul maintains with uncertainty. Fear-based sign reading uses signs as a tool of control, a way to manage the unbearable openness of not knowing by extracting certainty from the universe's messages. Genuine spiritual discernment uses signs as a tool of orientation, a way of deepening trust, not replacing it. The discerning soul does not need a sign to feel safe. It receives a sign as a confirmation of the safety it has already, in some essential way, chosen to inhabit. The art of spiritual discernment begins with a foundational posture, the decision to approach the language of signs from a place of trust rather than surveillance. This means releasing the need for every number to deliver a specific, actionable instruction. It means allowing some signs to be received as simply, "I am here." Not every message from the universe is a directive. Some are simply presence. Some are simply love. And the soul that has developed genuine discernment is able to receive that kind of message, simple, quiet, intimate, without demanding that it be more. Discernment also involves the capacity to sit with the sign before interpreting it. The compulsive mind wants to decode immediately, to lock in a meaning, to convert the mystery into information that can be managed. The discerning soul waits. It lets the sign settle. It asks, without urgency, "What is this touching in me? What is already alive in me that this number is corresponding to?" It trusts that the answer will arise from within, not from an external list of meanings, not from the first interpretation that arrives, but from the quiet, unhurried knowing of the soul's own intelligence. There is also a quality of humility in genuine discernment that is often overlooked. The discerning soul does not always know immediately what a sign means. It can hold the sign in a kind of sacred suspension, neither forcing an interpretation nor dismissing the experience, and allow the meaning to reveal itself in its own time, through the events and feelings and inner movements that follow. This quality of patient, humble waiting is not weakness. It is the posture of a soul that has learned to trust the timing of the universe as deeply as it trusts the content of its messages. When you read the signs from this place, more from trust, from patience, from the ground of a self that does not need the universe to perform certainty on its behalf, they become something different than they were before. They become companions. They become evidence of a relationship that has been ongoing far longer than your awareness of it. And that relationship, once felt at this depth, is not something you will ever need to chase again, because you will know with the calm clarity of genuine discernment that it was never going anywhere. It was always right here, written in the numbers, waiting for you to read it without fear. The moment you realize the signs were always for you, there comes a moment. It is different for everyone, and you will know it when it arrives, when the pattern becomes undeniable. Not in the way that compels argument or demands proof, in the way that simply settles into the bones with the quiet authority of something that was always true and has finally been allowed to be known. It is the moment when the accumulated weight of every sign, every number, every uncanny coincidence, every moment of inexplicable timing you have experienced across the entire arc of your life coalesces into a single, breathtaking recognition. It was never random. None of it was ever random. All of it, every single instance, was always for you. This recognition does not arrive as triumph. It arrives as relief, as the particular deep exhale of a person who has been carrying a very heavy thing for a very long time and has finally been allowed to set it down. The heavy thing was the belief that you were navigating this life without guidance, that the universe was indifferent to your specific existence, that the signs were, at best, comfort you were generating for yourself from neutral data, and that to truly believe in them was to be naive, vulnerable, spiritually immature. Setting that down is not naivety. It is the most courageous thing a human being can do, because it requires the surrender of the protective cynicism that has been keeping you at a safe distance from the full intensity of being loved by something vast. The universe's love for the individual soul is not vague or generic. It is precise, it is detailed. It is expressed in the specific number that appeared on the specific morning when you were making the specific decision that would shape the next chapter of your life. That level of precision is not coincidence. It is devotion. Think for a moment of the numbers you remember, Not the ones you looked up in a list. The ones you actually remember. The ones that stopped you, even briefly, even just enough to notice before the rational mind arrived to explain them away. Those numbers were not placed in your path randomly. They were placed there in response to something in you, to your readiness, your need, your soul's position in its own unfolding. They were calibrated to your frequency, your language, your specific kind of pain, and your specific kind of hope. And if you trace them back now with the honesty that this moment is asking of you, you will find that they were always pointing toward the same thing, the direction your soul was always trying to move in, even when the rest of you was not yet ready to follow. The universe did not send those signs because it had spare attention and you happened to be nearby. It sent them because you are part of its expression, because your journey, your growth, your awakening matters to the intelligence that organized the cosmos. You were not an afterthought in the design of this reality. You were a reason for it. And every sign you have ever received has been a confirmation of that fact, delivered in the language of numbers, written in the ink of a love that was never, for a single moment, absent from your life. You were always being led. There is nothing left to be afraid of. This is not a statement of spiritual bypassing or forced positivity. It is the conclusion that the soul arrives at when it has traveled far enough through its own experience, and honest enough through its own resistance, to see the whole picture, or at least enough of the picture to understand the shape of what has been holding it all along. You were always being led. In the seasons that felt like abandonment, you were being led. In the years that felt like stagnation, you were being led. In the moments that felt like collapse and when the future went opaque and the present became unbearable and every prayer seemed to dissolve into silence before it reached anything, you were being led. The leading was not always visible. It was not always comfortable. It did not always look like what you thought guidance was supposed to look like. But it was always there. The signs were always there. The numbers were always there, finding you in the exact moments when your soul was most in need of a signal that the intelligence orchestrating this journey had not looked away. What changes now is not the universe's relationship with you. What changes is your relationship with trust. Because trust once genuinely inhabited, not performed, not adopted as a spiritual concept, but lived as the actual foundation from which you engage with your life, is not something that requires ongoing proof. It is something that, once known from the inside, becomes its own evidence. The peace that comes with it is not the peace of having resolved all uncertainty. It is the peace of no longer requiring resolution before you allow yourself to feel held. The signs will keep coming. Not because you will need to be convinced again, but because the conversation between your soul and the universe does not end. It deepens. Each new number that finds you will carry not only a message for the chapter you are in, but a thread that connects backward to every sign that came before it, and forward to every sign that is still on its way. The language does not stop. The intelligence behind it does not tire. And you, having crossed the threshold of recognition, will receive each new signal not as a stranger receiving foreign correspondence, but as someone reading a letter from a beloved whose handwriting they have finally learned to recognize. The number you see tomorrow and the one after that and the ones that will find you in the chapters of your life that you cannot yet see. None of them will be random. All of them will be part of a conversation that began long before this lifetime and will continue long after it ends. A conversation between your soul and the intelligence that both created it and dwells within it. A conversation in which you have always been an active participant, even in the seasons when you were convinced you were speaking into silence. You came to this video because something in you was ready, not ready to understand angel numbers as a system or a spiritual hobby, but ready to recognize what they have always been. Love letters. Written in the language that transcends every barrier the rational mind erects, delivered through every medium the physical world makes available, addressed, without exception, without error, without a single moment of cosmic inattention, to you. Only you. Always you. The journey ahead will hold more signs, more numbers, more moments where the veil thins and something larger than the ordinary presses through and places its signal in your path. When those moments come, You will not need to question them the way you once did. You will not need to earn the right to receive them. You will simply stop, breathe, and recognize what has always been true. You are known. You are guided. You were never, for a single moment, left to find your way alone. And every number that has ever found you has been the universe's way of reminding you, quietly, persistently, with infinite love, of exactly that.